Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Jellyfish and May, let's talk about it. So the topic of today is Islam Makhachev at 170. Now, there came out these videos of Islam Makhachev training. He looks a little bit bigger, a little bit fuller, pause. And many people are like, well, he's not gonna have a problem at 170. People like Kenny or BZ talking about, you see the weight works like this and he's gonna be fine and he's gonna be amazing. And I just don't know. I truly believe that the fight that Islam is going to have with JDM is going to be by far the most difficult fight of Islam's life. And I really hope that Islam understands that, because what happens with some of these Dagestan, with these guys from the Caucasus regions, they understand that they're so good, and all these other people from the other side of Europe, or even especially America and Brazil and basically everyone else, they think these guys kind of suck. And that's halfway debatable, and especially comparing to the level that they're at in Dagestan and in the Caucasus regions. But my point is that I don't want Islam and that team to underestimate JDM. Because I remember with the Usman Nurmagomedov fight. He had a fight with Paul Hughes in the PFL, and it was a very competitive matchup. Now Usman obviously won, but even he mentioned that, like, oh, I underestimated this guy. Even with the Volkanovski fight, he kind of underestimated Volkanovski. Now obviously they were able to pull out the win. But my point is, like, with Jack Della Maddalena, Islam cannot do that. This is going to be the biggest guy he's ever fought, the most technical boxer he's ever fought. JDM is the best boxer technically in the UFC right now. That's a fact. And, if we're looking at especially the Dustin fight with Dustin Poirier, right, at UFC 302, I think, or 304, whatever. When we look at that fight, right, we saw that, yes, was Islam winning the exchanges? Of course, and that was partly because of the takedown threat, but I'm not going to take away anything from his boxing. But Dustin was able to keep it very competitive, and in some moments, in certain parts of the round, Dustin was able, to win some of those exchanges on Islam, and I just don't think that with a guy who's way bigger, way more technical, you understand, and especially with somebody with Craig Jones in his pocket, because we saw, like, with JDM when he was fighting Bilal, who's better to prep for Islam than Bilal? Like, think about it. If you were going to fight Islam, right, and you needed to practice, right, who's better than Bilal himself, somebody who's trained with that team, somebody with strong grappling himself, somebody with good striking himself, and who's better than Bilal to practice for Islam, And we saw him beat JDM like completely, 5 rounds domination. It was beautiful. It was amazing matchup, and Bilal did great. But JDM is just better, especially with having Craig Jones, because Craig Jones is a jiu-jitsu specialist, and he knows how all the tricks and things of how to get up and all this stuff. And I just think that with that added too, with a person like Craig Jones giving, like, understanding that whole grappling game, like to like the specific things, and I just don't think that Islam's going to have the same type of control and things, especially since he's going to be the shorter guy. Because remember something, people don't want to talk about this, but Islam a lot of the time has been the bigger guy at lightweight. He's a huge lightweight. He's an above average lightweight in terms of size. You understand? And that's definitely paid attention. He's 5'10", he's a bit taller. You see how he looks like outside of camp and things, and even inside of camp, you can see this guy at lightweight. He's bigger, he's fuller and everything. And at 170, I just don't believe that that strength and things are going to carry over necessarily. I heard he's talked about he's doing a lot of weightlifting and training and stuff, and that's really great and fine and dandy. But for someone like JDM, he doesn't really need to change that much or change that hard. He's been fighting at 170 all the time. But for someone like Islam, I just don't think there's enough time necessarily. If it maybe was a year, let's say this fight was happening next year July or next year March or something, then probably I'd say a little bit different, right? But the fact that it happened in January, maybe it's going to happen towards the later end of this year, I do believe he can make some strides. But the thing is, like, within fighting, you get used to fighting at your weight class. Your speed, your skill, technique, and things get used to and get fine-tuned for that specific weight specifically. You understand? And we have seen when people move up or down, especially when people move up at lighter weight classes, you see them have the skill advantage and things, right? But especially the jump from 155 to 170 is a very big jump. You understand? It's the second biggest jump from going to heavyweight, from light heavyweight to light heavyweight. But especially for in this context, which is like 55, most skilled division, 170, arguably the most second most hardest division because of the size and the skill those guys are definitely at as well. It's not going to be a walk in the park for Islam. I just don't think that. Now, I do believe that Islam, I'm not very confident in picking Islam. I'm just gonna keep it real. I'm not very confident in picking Islam at all. I do believe JDM can win, but do I believe that Islam can somehow get the win done? Yes, I do believe he can get the win done, but Lord, oh my, it's gonna be a tough one for Islam on this one. And especially with people like Khamzat, hinting at moving in the division. If I was Islam, this fight at 170 is going to be one and done. It's going to, if anything, I could talk like this. If this is a one and done fight for Islam, like he's not going to stay at 170 and face people like Sean Brady and maybe even Shavkat, because especially people like Shavkat and things, those guys are just, some of them, like Sean Brady's jiu-jitsu is insane. He's striking as well. Sean Brady's striking is not bad at all. People like Shavkat, who are long and rangy and stuff, I'm just thinking he's at a severe size disadvantage at 170 because those guys are going to be bigger, fuller, and taller at times. Now, the thing is, if this is a one and done fight, I believe that Islam can win it. But I don't think that Islam is going to stay. If anything, what we're going to see, what I believe, we're going to see that Ilya is going to fight Arman eventually. I know Ilya is talking about like, if they say I should fight him, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna vacate the belt. I don't care anymore. And that's just duck behavior. But we'll talk about Ilya ducking another day. But I believe that Ilya is going to fight Arman, and I do believe that it's possible that Ilya does win. I do believe it's possible, And then after that fight with JDM, for UFC International Fight Week, we can see the super fight, and this is probably Islam's last fight with Ilya. And at that stage, he would have been a double champion, and especially with people in the 170 division and 185 division wanting to move down, he's probably not going to want to stay there. They're a smart team. Yes, they're confident, but in Islam and Khabib's camp, yes, they're confident people, but I'm sure they understand these weight things probably even better than us. They're probably going to do that one fight, come back down, fight Ilya, and that's it. Because Islam, the door is closing now. We have a lot of game study on Islam. And there's just a lot of people who can beat Islam in theory, at least. And if he stays in the sport, and you guys know how the sport is, if you stay here a bit too long, ask Adesanya, ask Adesanya, ask all these other people, what happens when you stay here a bit too long? You will eventually lose. Ask Usman, you understand? And that's the thing. And I think someone like Islam understands that, and Khabib did the right job. I know people are like, oh, he left too early. Yeah, okay. I believe that Khabib had one or maybe two fights in him, but he did the right idea by getting out early, because as the longer you stay, you will get beat eventually. That is a fact in this game. And I really think that Islam is right that next year we don't have 5 more Islam fights. We maybe have 2 fights maximum. I'm not even going to say 3 fights. We have 2 fights maximum, and then that is it. And then Islam's legacy is what it is. It's an amazing legacy, but still. So, anyways, that's the video for you guys. Thanks for watching the video. Like, share, subscribe. I really appreciate you guys being here and watching the content and things. I'm trying to make all my videos at once now, so when I get into the exam season, I can just pump out the videos one by one, or at least in a couple of days for you guys. But yes, please like, share, subscribe, and things. See you guys on the next one. Jellyfish out. Peace out. Bye. Have a great day.